everybody. The old fat man has to do the hosting today because Samantha's missing in action. And JD, I don't know where he's jetted off to, someplace out there.
He'll
But,
pop. He'll pop on in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, he'll show up in the last couple minutes there. Anyway, I hope you all have had a good time since our last show. Thanks everybody we had a lot of likes and shares. So I want to remind you, please like and share our show. This show is sponsored by the Hamster Weak Signal Group out of San Antonio, Texas, promoting weak signal activity and simplex activity on VHF, UHF, and above. We don't just center ourselves in San Antonio, so don't think if you don't live here, you got to be here. I mean, Andrea is either in Brennan or in New Jersey.
That's Brenham, home of Bluebell ice cream. You should know that.
Brenham.
I said Brenham.
Close enough.
Whatever. Look, English is my native tongue, and I'm not good at it. Anyway, so we had a lot going on. On our end, Ruth and I have been busy finishing up our ranch house and prepare for future retirement here. We've almost got it 100% complete. I am still working on finalizing my ham shack and everything, and in preparation for a few things. Right now, what I'm doing is getting everything set up for remote operation. We decided that I am not going to build a second ham shack up at the ranch. I'm just too damn tired for that. So what I'm doing is I'm putting a Maestro flex radio up there, just the head unit, and it will be remoted in, and I will have 100% control of everything in the shack off of my Maestro. I'll build and I've got a module to turn amps on and off, rotate antennas, switch antennas. So nobody will know I'm not here. And when I'm here, nobody will know I'm not at the ranch. Well, anyway, let's go over to Miss Andrea. Since you're down on the bottom, we're going to curve down and come back up again.
I'm on the
stuff.
over
what
here.
You been up to? I know you were up in New Jersey. You hid out from the hurricane.
Yes, I managed. This is like the third hurricane that's come through, and I've come down the week after the hurricane rather than enjoy the hurricane. I mean that a little sarcastically. But so fortunately, I was away. A big branch fell where I would park rover, although I normally don't park rover when there's heavy winds expected because the trees always losing branches. I hate that. Let's see. So from New Jersey, I went out to HamCon Zion, a new amateur conference, not conference, but what's the word? The convention out there in southwestern Utah. And also at that convention was the YLRL convention, the Young Ladies Radio League, which was the primary reason I went out there for. It was the first one of those conferences in 6 years. The one in 2021 got skipped for, virus kind of reasons. And so I will say for the YLs out there, the YLRL group is really nice. You get to meet a lot of ladies that are doing a lot of things in ham radio. And they're, for the most part, not amateurs that are in it because their husbands are in it. And and I will say, like much of ham radio, a lot of them are older, but we also have some truly young ones in the group there. As for the HamCon Zion attendance, I would say was a little light. They had Yesu out there. a couple other manufacturers, but that was the biggest one. And I hope they do better next year when they run it again. This was kind of a shakedown effort. The other thing that's going on, and that's in 2 weeks, is the Central States VHF conference, which I'll be going to. And that conference is focused on weak signal VHF operations, just like the Hamsters group. And I would like to encourage these type of conferences. There's Central States is the closest one that gets into this area. And they've had them in Texas before. They've had them out in New Mexico. I've been there. This one's in Iowa. They've been in Wisconsin, and I think Arkansas was last year. I unfortunately couldn't make that one. And I enjoy these conferences. There's a lot of talks about the kind of challenges and setups that you have on VHF, UHF, and microwaves. And so I'm looking forward to that. You can find just a few sites here, YLRL.org. Or just search Google YLRL. You'll find that. And then Central States VHF, if you Google that, you'll find their website. They'll have information about their conference and a lot of other handy information. They have various presentations, and they have papers you can get. What do you call that? The little book that has all the papers in them. When you go to these things, the proceedings, that's it. It makes it sound very professional. So again, I would encourage that, and looking in, even if you can't go, you can, I believe, just order yourself the proceedings if you want.
Yeah, I've got the book catalog and stuff from Central States almost every year. I attended the Austin one, which was, goodness, what, 2019, I think, maybe 20.
No, you're going further back, because 2018 was Albuquerque, and 2019 was in Kansas.
Well, I know it wasn't any earlier than 2017, I don't think.
Right, could have 2017.
And stuff. And at one time, they wanted us to host the 2020, 2021, one of those 2 years here in San Antonio. And boy, we were looking, that was a big bite for us to chew.
Yeah.
And stuff. But then COVID came along and kind of killed all of that. So I really hope they make it back to Austin or San Antonio or someplace in this region and stuff, because I just don't have time to take off from work right now and buzz all the way up to, halfway across the country. I mean, look, when we went to Huntsville, that was a 5-day affair. With travel and everything else. So we've got to do that. But yeah, the YL thing, I want to say they did something someplace pretty close to here a few years back. Now I'm
Oklahoma City in 2018.
Okay.
And I missed one. I want to say there might have been one conference in Dallas on the VHF. So don't take my word on the years, but they have them.
Yeah, well, as you get older, you find out that people make fun of me all the time because I'll say the other day, and the other day was like 19 years ago. And stuff, because I was sitting there talking, a bunch of us from high school got together for dinner one night, and I'm sitting here talking about something that we all did and stuff, and that it was, just I in my brain it was just the other day. And Danny's like, dude, that was almost 40 years ago that we did that. And it's like, well, yeah, you're right. So, you know, I am a bad judge of time anymore. Unfortunately, as 70 gets closer and closer in my mirror, it's depressing. Well, Miss Melissa, what do you got for us?
I don't have anything exciting going on right now, but I am enjoying the weather in mid-July in South Texas. I cannot believe it. We still have floating dark clouds and breeze, and that's really unusual. So, taking advantage of that for sure. I'm loving the weather, but I think for the next few months, my life is going to be really boring because I plan on studying a lot. So I'll be inside, out of the heat, with my brand new HVAC system, enjoying the cool air, studying. So
What are you studying?
something that I want to do for work.
Okay. It's top secret.
Yeah.
She'd tell us, but she'd have to kill us. All right. You've got a segment for us. Do you want to do that, or you want to do your comments and questions first?
Let's do comments and questions.
Okay.
Okay.
Take her away.
Okay, so this last month's show, we had some comments from Mike McDonald, 5147, our #1 and most devoted fan. Mike says, "Wait, Sam is divorced? Marry me." And after marveling at Greg's radio equipment list, Mike now wants to be adopted as well as marry Samantha. But on a serious note, Mike says that chart that Greg shows of the different feed lines and how much power you get out of the 50-watt radio is a big deal. Amazing the amount of loss that you have using smaller, cheaper coax. Any comments on that? No?
No, that's a point that I try to make all the time to people that,
Yeah.
you know, if you are not paying attention to the losses in your feed line, you can watch a lot of power go away. But the most important aspect of that is if your transmit power goes away, look at the microvolts coming in for your receive side and what they do. And so, you know, and we demonstrated that at a recent hamster club meeting where we actually demonstrated the power losses and stuff through different lengths of coax and brands and types. So
you pay for it in money or you pay for it in RF.
that's right. And you know, I've listened to a lot of people sit there and they say, well, you know, I can go buy a $5 connector compared to the $25 connectors you're wanting. Well, two things that people don't take into consideration. Number one, connectors are lossy if you get cheap stuff. Number two, I cannot tell you on VHF and above how many cheap connectors I've seen melted at 800 to 1,000 watts of power. It's not a pretty picture. What? I hear a comment coming out of your head there, Andy.
I just said, wow. That's
Yeah.
all.
No, I've got, in fact, one in the middle of our single sideband net running my old Henry amp at about 1,300 watts. All of a sudden in the middle of the net, it made a loud noise and took me a couple of days to track it down because I kept looking outside and the connector coming right out of the back of the radio where the coax connected to the amp, not the radio, but the amplifier, literally melted that whole stuff in there. Coax gets hot at VHF frequencies with power. And apparently the connectors get really hot. So I started buying quality connectors. They're about $20 a piece for the coaxial, and we won't even go into the ones for the big hard line. I have to take out a banknote for connectors on those.
Okay, another comment from Mike. He is also hoping for a talk about the ICOM 9700, and he wants to know if he needs to buy the GPS clock card for it, the GPS clock card for it. So I do have your reply.
Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, I think you got
Save me voice.
Unless you're going to be doing narrowband digital modes on 23 centimeters, the radio standalone is fine. Once the radio warms up, if you're only operating 23 centimeters, the fan never comes on because transmit power on 23 is only 10 watts. I have two 9700s and use both of them stock, with the exception I did add some ceramic wool over the reference oscillator RF shielding can for insulation. That alone stabilized the frequency considerably as the fan cycles on and off when in 270.
I gotta look and see what my answer was there, because part of that didn't make sense to me. I'm gonna amend that real quick.
Okay.
And add, if you start doing things like EME, the GPS locking your frequency is a big plus. It just helps keep it a little bit more things. And I can see by Andrea's face that she disagrees with me.
Well, I'm just thinking you've got Doppler there, and you're just picking up from the reference part. So I don't know. If it doesn't move during a transmission, it shouldn't be a big deal. But
well, I've had some drifting on those, but usually once they're warmed up, and I don't turn my radios off ever. They're on 24/7 all the time. And so I don't have to worry about the warm up of a cold radio and stuff usually. But that's the only time. I don't know. I've never used a GPS to lock things in, and I've never missed it.
Okay. So, and I was also, did you say ceramic wool?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out what she.
That's what that was your reply.
That sounds like, let me go look at this. That sounds like
what did you add over the reference oscillator, RF shielding can for insulation?
Yeah, I'm looking at all the notes and stuff on there. I am suspecting that well, I can't find it exactly. I am suspicious that the telephone auto-corrected into something bizarre because
that's not
I don't
good.
know what ceramic wool is. Now, I may have found a new product. I don't know.
Okay. Greg, read your replies before you click.
I usually reply with verbal driving down the road.
Oh no.
Yeah, I listen to it and then I sit there and say something, but
Okay.
I have never had a sentence come out to ceramic wool before.
Okay. All right. All right. Another commenter. The Hamman-BS4KS says, new to your channel, love the energy and content. Welcome. And have another comment from Michael, WA5AZQ. Enjoyed the segment about FM simplex, learned a lot. The loss chart on different types of coax was very informative. And I 1,000,000% agree with the notion that digital modes should have their own separate categories for contests by themselves and not be counted with other categories in any way, shape, or form. In my opinion, the Digi Modes have their place just like HTs, but not in contesting unless it's a contest specifically for them alone. I don't know if anyone else noticed, but I haven't done any specific research yet, but in the raw scores for the June VHF, it seemed the overall number of entries was low. That could be a number of factors, I guess. Summertime, vacations, the ARRL low TW issues, etc. And for those that don't know, low TW, that means logbook of the world.
Hey, I'm going to comment on the ceramic wool. That wasn't my comment.
What?
Yeah, you need to learn to read, Missy. That's
Oh
why
no,
I had
I
this
messed
tweet.
up.
Yeah, that was not my reply. I was the reply under that reply.
Okay. Well, okay, I got that one too. But that was your reply that you verbally just said. So anyway, Michael, WA5AZQ says, great show though. Keep up the great work. I know there's a lot that goes into it. 73.
Well, thank you, people. On that. I ain't got any other comments or questions.
No comments on the comments and questions? Because if we're done with that, then we can move into my segment, and that is the hamshack of Dale, KA5YEU.
All right, well, let's roll over to Dale.
This month's Show Us Your Shack, we head over to Alice, Texas, which is roughly an hour west of Corpus Christi. Dale, KA5YEU, is operating weak signal on a Kenwood TS2000 and a pair of stacked 10-element Yagis for 2 meters, and a single 12-element for 70 centimeters. For Dale's HF operations, he uses a Kenwood TS590SG and a multi-band sloper. Dale notes, my 2 best contacts on single sideband 2 meters is Florida and South Carolina via Tropo, and Canada via Sporadic E. I also worked the same Florida station on 70 centimeter single sideband as well. N5XO introduced me to weak signal way back when, and I've had a blast with it ever since. 73. Thank you so much, Dale, for showing your shack and being part of the show. And if viewers want to show your shack radios or antennas, please contact us at hamster-updates@144-200.net.
All right.
Well, that was pretty good. I appreciate it. Good little segment there. And Dale, keep it up. Took me 2 years, I think, to talk Dale into getting on single sideband. And when he finally made that jump, he made it in the big time. In fact, those 2 antennas, I sold him. We met on the side of the road, and instead of doing a drug deal, we were doing an antenna deal on the side of the highway, just outside of Alice. On that. Well, let's go ahead and roll into my segment. I've actually got John Ritter, and for the life of me right this second, I'm drawing a blank on his call sign. So, John, I apologize.
Is this the guy from Three's Company?
Yeah. And he brought Chrissy and what's her name and all that. And Mr. Roper's on his way down and everything. So I wish I could remember his call sign right this moment, but I cannot. So with that, we'll roll into his segment, and maybe he'll say his call sign. So he's doing a segment on Meshtastic.
Well, good evening. I'm John Ritter. I'm KC5GI, and I think I met some of you last Saturday at the breakfast. So some of your faces look familiar, some others don't. So just a minute to introduce myself. I've lived here going on 4 years. Due to my job, I move around quite a bit. Several years ago, well, 17, 18 years ago, I lived in Houston and would come over here periodically for work as well. So familiar with San Antonio, but But at any rate, just glad to be here, and thank you, Greg, for inviting me to come and talk about this subject of this whole idea of Meshtastic. How many of you have at least heard of Meshtastic? Okay, several. All right. How many of you have done anything with Meshtastic?
Read about it.
Okay, so you know what it is?
Read about it.
Okay, all right. Fair enough. Well,
Listen to some people in Austin that's played with it.
talk about, okay. Well, Meshtastic, over the past, I don't know, very few years, 2, 3, 4 years, was in its infancy, and it's still in its infancy. A lot of growing about it, but we're going to talk about really what Meshtastic is. We're going to look at the features and some functionality and some different things of what it is and what it does. Apologize for not having a screen, but we'll get the slides out to you. So this could be a very basic kind of introduction to Meshtastic. There's a lot of details as you eventually, hopefully, will buy some radios and get involved with it. But there's a lot more details to it. But with that said, there's a lot of basic things that I'll be covering and kind of giving the overview of what really Meshtastic is, what it can do, its purposes. I'll cover that in just a minute in the overview, but I'm going to turn this a little bit so I can see it too. It really works off some really inexpensive small radios. I have one in the truck. I should have brought it in. Wasn't thinking about it, but really inexpensive radios under $40, $50 that you can purchase. You can buy them from Amazon. You can buy them from AliExpress. You can buy them from Rack Roland. You can buy it from Heltec. There's various different brands, and I'll show you a few of those a little bit later, but they're inexpensive. Most of them come on little project boards, and so they don't come in a case, so you can put them in whatever case you want, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But it's really designed for long range. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's what LoRa uses. LoRa, which is long range. That's what it's short for, is LoRa. But it uses LoRa as a way to communicate, but it's really great for anywhere that's lacking any kind of infrastructure for communication. So when you're talking about communications, of course, we're all hams here, so we understand VHF, UHF, HF, digital modes on VHF and UHF as well, APARs and so forth. It's similar to APARs, but it's a bit different as well. There's some advantages and some other things that we'll look at, but it's really great for making connectivity for outdoor events or outdoor emergency communications and so forth like that. So we'll talk about more. This is what we're going to cover. We're going to cover some key features of it, how it works, the frequency band that it uses, some of the supported devices. I'll show a few pictures of that. I know it's kind of small up here, but if you want to come up afterwards, we can run through it and I can show you so you can get a closer look if you'd like. Some real world applications, what that can be, how to get started with it, some current node network status. What's it look like around San Antonio? How many nodes are there? What's the network look like at the current moment? We'll look at that as well. Go over some frequently asked questions and also have a Q&A. That's the time to cover that. So some of the key features, long range communication. So in Europe, they did a test and they were able to go over 254 kilometers. Now keep in mind, this is low power stuff. They were probably on a mountain going down into a valley or going to another mountain. So, and they were probably using some parabolic or some type of beam to really localize the direction of the antennas, but nevertheless, it's been done. So it is capable of going a bit further than just across the street. So it's a phone-free mesh. So, and you can use it for communications. So you do not have to have cellular signal. You don't have to have Wi-Fi signal. You can use, in fact, you use your cell phone, your smartphone, and download an app, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well, to connect to the radio, and that's how you can send texts back and forth. So you can text back and forth using a smartphone using these devices. So you connect Bluetooth to one of the radios, these little Bluetooth radios, and I've got one on my truck. I'll bring it in after we get done with some questions. And what it does is you're able to connect to that through the app on your smartphone, Android or iPhone. And then the little radio, the little board, will take that data that it's getting from the Bluetooth and send it over 915 megahertz. So it operates on 915 megahertz. It creates a mesh. So when you have multiple of these little radios, we call them nodes. When you have multiples of those, it's a smart learning, and they'll begin to know, okay, hey, there's another node. Oh, there's another node. And then they'll start to connect themselves, and it creates the mesh. And so it's self-replicating, so you don't have to go out and try to find other nodes or anything like that. It does it for you. And so it will connect, it will notify you, hey, I found a new node. And you can direct message the person, or you can go to a different channel. So these nodes, the way the software and the firmware is set up and the app is set up, each one of these nodes has 7 channels. Starting at 0, going through 7, so I guess 8. But in each one of those channels, the first channel, 0, normally is labeled what we call long fast. And it's really used for going longer distances, but at a fast rate as far as baud rate and so forth. So it's kind of like in the old days we had the party line on telephones. It's open. When you send a message on that, anybody within the mesh will see it. So that's kind of an open forum, if you will, to send messages back and forth. The other channels you can make, you can name them different things. And so as long as, if I named my first channel, instead of 0 being long fast, channel 1 being San Antonio. If you go and label yours San Antonio and have the same settings, you and I can communicate to one another. Nobody else will really see it unless they make a channel that says San Antonio. So that's, go ahead.
No, just a question. Is it an actual RF channel, or is it a time slot that you're creating?
That's a good question, and I'll have to get back with you on that. I think it's it's like a time slot because it's data. Because you're transmitting, the mesh is all on the same frequency. Okay, so it would be a different segment of the channel on the carrier, right? Or well, it's digital, so it's going to be a different digital message. How it gets routed.
Different header.
Yep, different header. Yep, how it's messaged. Each one of the channels can have up to 100 nodes on it. So I was talking with Patrick over in Medina County, and I said, you know, one thing, if this really blows up and gets big in San Antonio, I can see the open channel, which is long fast, getting kind of clogged.
Yeah.
You know, if there's only a capacity of 100 nodes. And so I did some research, and I found that once it reaches, the way they've designed the firmware, once it reaches 100 nodes, the older nodes that hadn't checked in for a while gets dropped off, and so it gets replaced with a new node. So it's
First in, last out.
That's right. So it's constantly refreshing itself. Now you can go in and just delete the database of nodes on your particular node, and it'll kind of clear it out. But I read where New York City, for example, they have over 1,000 nodes, and they don't have any issues as far as, you know. So if somebody drops off the mesh network, the mesh, as far as all the nodes, recognize it, and they figure, okay, it's been offline for 5 days. Somebody else pops in, okay, that old node goes away, and so it's constantly cycling. So
what is it used to keep from retransmitting the same messages? Is there a time to live type variable in there, or a maximum number of hops?
Yes, we'll get to that.
Okay.
You're tracking right with me.
Okay.
So good.
All right, I'll be quiet.
No, that's good. So it's also can be encrypted. So it uses AES 256. So it is encrypted. So you can send traffic across it, and it is encrypted. So you don't have to worry about things. So for example, if we create a channel, we can encrypt it. I can create a channel for my family, and so just my family can use that channel. And so they'll get messages as long as I have all the settings and everything that are mirrored that they're getting with their node. They can transmit and receive messages on that encrypted channel.
Well, let me throw a question in there.
Yep.
Because in amateur radio, you can't encrypt.
That's right.
So you can
But
only
this
do
isn't
the
on
non.
amateur frequencies.
Huh?
This isn't on amateur
No,
radio.
it actually can be.
It can be.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So
Yes, and
So-
you can run 4 watts on amateur frequency.
Okay.
yes.
So I've done my research too.
Okay.
On that, so I just wanted to confirm
Yes.
and make sure everybody understood
Yes.
that that's the non-ham channels.
This is what we're talking about is an ISM band, 950 megahertz, non-licensed channels and so forth that we're talking about currently. You can do ham, and you can even do it on 433 megahertz as well. So there's a selection in the settings when you click licensed operator, it turns off the encryption. So that's the option you have. So,
Got you covered.
yep. It's battery life. I was talking with Patrick the other day. I think they did his node without any power to it for like 26 hours. So it'll last a long time. Depends on which type of little radio board that you get. Some are more efficient with battery usage than others. So you just have to pay attention to that, do your research. There are several solar nodes, and we'll take a look at those in just a few minutes. So you do text communication. So you can do direct messaging. So for example, if I know I see a node out there and it's your name, I can go into the direct messaging and I can direct message you directly. I don't have to go on the channels. I can just you and me back and forth. Or you can go into the channels and it's more of a group chat, if you will. If it's long fast, everybody sees it. But if we have a specified channel, like I said earlier, San Antonio or what have you, or North San Antonio, or only people who are signed up to that chat group, if you will see it.
You got a quick question.
Yep, go ahead.
Can it go into a specific room, as to say, if the receiver is not there, so when he comes on back, you can see the message, or is it just real time?
No, it's well, yes. So what it does is it will send the message and it will come up on your node, okay? Even if your phone's not connected to it. So when you connect your phone to it, it will populate. So it's there, even if you're away and you're not connected to your node. Does that answer your question? It also does geo-tracking, so you can put it if your radio has a GPS card on it. Some do not come with it, some others do, or you can buy it as an optional feature. You can see in real time where people are at on the map. You can also drop pins. We just recently learned this last week. You can drop a pin and try to send it to folks. Now, we're still trying to fiddle with that, see how well that works, but you can drop pins and with the map itself. It does have a map feature where you click on in the app. It will pull up a map, and you can see a map of all the nodes that are surrounding you. And you can open it up or close it just like any map on your smartphone. And you can see all the different nodes. You can click on one, and it'll tell you whose it is and so forth. So, and I think if you go to your node list, yes, you go to your node list and you click on it, you can click on the map if they have a GPS chip in theirs, and it'll show you where they're at. So you can also turn it off if you don't want it. So how it works As mentioned, it uses LoRa, which is just the little protocol it uses for the firmware. It is spread spectrum, so it uses all that bandwidth for the signal. And it's pretty resilient and robust. So it will detect what the signal strength is of each node, and it will determine which path is the best path for getting success to the destination. So if you've got a node and it's got a really bad signal, but I'm seeing you, but he's got a much better signal, it'll route to you and then route to you. It'll hop. If the next one, if you're stronger than him for some reason, it'll route that way. So it's auto sensing and it figures all that stuff out. But RF is RF. So you guys are used to low power type of transmissions, especially with simplex and so forth. Same rules apply. Higher the better, more gain antenna the better. All those sorts of things still apply to this type of thing. So that's why a lot of folks are putting up solar nodes on towers and higher dB gain antennas and so forth. So, weak signal propagation, you just have to think that way with this type of thing. There are folks out in Medina County, they're making 10 to 12 mile distance shots with it. And it's like I say, it's 30 dBm, so equivalent maybe to a watt. So they're actually doing fairly well. And some of them do not have real reliable cell service, so they're using this. That's kind of a picture of how it works. It routes the data, like I mentioned earlier. It finds the best path to get to the destination. Looking at signal to noise ratios and so forth. And this is kind of an idea of what it looks like. If you have a smartphone here, you connect by Bluetooth to your node that you have, and it goes out through the network. And so, for example, if you're this one over here and you're 5 miles away, and you say, I'm wanting to send this message to you, it knows where you are, the mesh does, and so it'll go through and it will hop 3 times. That's the default setting. You can increase it if you want, but it'll hop at least 3 times to get to your node and you can receive the message. So multiple hops it can make to get to the destination.
What's the maximum number of hops?
I'd have to look.
Probably a lot.
Yeah, I'd have to look and see. I haven't really gone above 4. So, but you got to remember, when you increase the hops, it increases the
Latency.
Time to live packets.
Yep, and also increases the traffic. And so the more traffic you have, the more noise that's going on, and so it can get congested. So that's why they default set it at 3. It can be changed, but that's their reasoning. So that's a bigger picture, so you can see the path, of 3 hops going to your node, 1, 2, 3, and then to the next node, which is attached to the other phone, essentially. So as mentioned earlier, it's on 915 megahertz. Now it starts at like 902 and goes to 915. So there's different frequencies in there that are being used. That's the band here in North America. It's the maximum power output is like 30 dBm ERP, so about a watt or so of power.
So since it uses spread spectrum, is there like a master and a slave, one that generates sync for the other ones, or they all kind of run like in a master mode?
I would have to look. Okay. Honestly, I haven't got that far yet.
Because normally in spread spectrum, you have kind of like Bluetooth when you pair something, you have one that it locks.
Has a time sync.
To, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, the ones that have GPS in them, they have the time sync as far as that's concerned. But, I mean, a lot of them do not have GPS. So that's a very good question. We'll have to dig into that one. So the supported devices, there's the rack whiz block that you can use, the starter kit. It's just a board and one little module you put onto it, and then from there you have to add your power, whether it's a USB or it's a battery. You have to add your antennas for Bluetooth and one for your RF, and put it in a closure. So however you decide to do that, that's totally up to you. There are some that are turnkey type models. Station G1 that just came out, it's a little flat type looking thing, about the size of your iPhone, and you know, it's all combined. All you gotta do is plug it in and put the antenna on it. It's good ready to go. You may have to flash it with the updated firmware, but that's about it. LilyGo makes a T-beam, and there's also a LilyGo T-Echo, and that's a self-contained unit that you can purchase. That's about anywhere from $80 to $90 to $100, something like that. Heltec makes one. It's a Heltec V3. I own one of those. I own a T-beam. I own a WizBlock. The Heltec and LilyGo are not as efficient on battery management. The WizBlock from Rack Wireless is the most efficient. So a lot of folks will use those to make their solar nodes out of. So that's a picture of the WizBlock starter kit with the WizBlock. And we can look at these later afterwards. There's the Heltec. That's the one that just came out. It's that WizBlock mesh pocket. So we'll look at some real world applications, outdoor activities, hiking, biking, backpacking, flying if you're a flyer, emergency situations. So recently the Ham Club in Medina County did two activations, and they used this with both events with no issues. They were able to send messages and traffic back and forth, use the GPS. I believe they used GPS tracking. I'll have to double check with them, but they did use it, and it seemed to work just fine for them. I didn't know the extent of it. I needed to ask them. I just briefly talked to them about it, but they did use it, and it seemed to work well. Community projects. So you mentioned something coming up next week, or next month. What is it this next month?
Oh, I'm gonna go over that.
Oh,
But it's
perfect,
Basically antennas and stuff.
Okay. But any event that's going on, you can use it for that. It's great for, especially for families who do not have licenses. So if you have folks and it's an emergency situation, you have several of these little things laying around, and they've at least downloaded the app on their phone, you can hand them a device and say, okay, we'll be able to keep in contact if no cell service is working. That's an option for folks who do not have a license. So that's a perk that goes along with that. So setting up the Meshtastic device, you got to choose which board, which radio you want to go with. Then you have to, in some cases you have to install the firmware. Some of them come with it already on it, with Meshtastic on it. But updating it, make sure you have the most up-to-date firmware with it.
About how often does new versions of firmware come out?
They come out periodically. I would say they come out probably, I don't know, every 2 months or 3 months, something like that. But even if you don't have it updated, it still works. So even with older firmware, it will still communicate. That's why, people who have them up on 50 feet on a tower don't have to climb it every 2 months to go up there and flash it. So, but you can remotely administrate them. So you can create a channel that's an admin channel that allows you to go in and remotely manage that system. So you can do that as well. But the biggest thing is do your research. Go and learn about it. There are several places on YouTube. The Comms channel is one of them. He's got some great stuff on it about building solar nodes and so forth. Go to meshtastic.org, read all the introduction, and just do the research, because there's a lot of little nuances of when you're first starting up trying to get it to work. It can be very frustrating. I can attest. Because there's all these little, what's this setting do? I don't know, I have to look it up. well, if I click this, then it doesn't work anymore. So knowing, going back and doing your research, figuring it out, and taking your time. I mean, ask somebody. That helps. But if you learn to do it yourself, just like anything else in ham radio, like building antennas or putting together an APAR system, whatever. If you're doing that, you know how it works. You know it backwards and forwards, and you know what to do if it doesn't work. So I encourage you to do your research and go visit Meshtastic.org.
So, to start, would you recommend getting 2 of them so you can play with yourself?
You can.
Not knowing how much is out there.
Sure, you can. And I've got some pictures of how many nodes are out there. I'll show that in a minute
Okay.
around town. There's not hardly any on the east side of town.
Of course.
So,
Right,
No.
posts are talking to Medina County.
yes. So when I first started, I put a solar node together because I have a friend in Houston, and we got to talking about it. And hey, this would be great. He's a ham. And we're like, this would be a great thing. Just fun. And so we started working with it, and so I put my solar node together. I think it's late January, early February this year, and I put it on top of my house, thinking we'll see what happens. And there was for like 2 weeks, nobody was on there. I'm like, great, spent all this time and money and effort and everything. Finally, a couple people finally it just started trickling. There's maybe 5 or 6 people, just random people. They had names. You can name your node whatever you want. Back when the eclipse was going on, somebody named theirs Eclipse Chaser. And so I tried messaging him and no response. So just random people. But then some of the folks in Medina County started looking at it, and they talked about it at their club meeting. And all of a sudden, poof, there's 30. And they put up about 4 or 5 solar nodes. And so they've got Medina County covered. So there are several folks on the west side of town that you can see. But there's not a lot on the east side. But I'll show a map here in a few minutes. Something I did want to mention about the tracking. If you're familiar, if anybody's former military or law enforcement, you may be familiar with ATAC. It's a Android Tactical Awareness Kit, they call it. I'm military, I work with a lot of special operators, and so they use that device in the field. Of course, the military is completely scrambled and you'll never get into it. But anyway, they use that as a situational awareness type of device to where they can see where all their folks are in the field. So when a combat commander's looking at a field commander's looking, so okay, where's my folks? Okay, there they are. All right, and they can message and direct them to do whatever. This can work the same way. If you use that, there's a plug-in you have to use. I've not gotten into it. Some of the folks in Medina County are just beginning to look at it, but it's great for tactical situations, especially for a disaster scenario. If you're running a large operation with a lot of people, a lot of volunteers, like going over to Houston, for example, you can have a live situation and you can show where all the fire trucks are or all the police department trucks are. So
I wonder how that'd work on the bicycle things. You know what I'm
You
talking
want
about?
to track D?
No, I'm
Okay.
Bike rides.
talking about, you
Yeah,
know what I'm
the
talking about.
bike rides, him in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tour right now, the fronts. They got a little tag underneath your seat, each bike has.
Okay.
Don't know what it is, but I'm aware of it.
So you can do that. You can track and see where everybody's at and see,
Yeah.
have a situational
If
awareness.
one's not moving, then you know he may be having problems.
Right.
And you can send whatever they call those vans.
Yeah, sag wagon. So I encourage you to join the Meshtastic community. Go and start learning about it, watching videos. There's, like I say, a ton of videos on Meshtastic. A lot of folks who are preppers use this.
Or what?
Preparedness-minded people.
Okay.
So, a lot of folks are doing that, especially in rural areas where there's not a lot of cell service. They've been using it. Look at the documentation, all the resources, and begin to get involved yourself. So this is a picture of a solar node. This is the one I built. It's got the whiz block in there. I've got 2 18650 lithium batteries that I put on there. And I've got a solar panel, a 5-watt or 6-watt solar panel glued to the front. It's been up since January. and I've not had any. It hasn't dipped below 82%, I think, the battery life. So it just sits there and hums along. I haven't had any issues with it, and except when I go messing with it, then I have to start
You
over.
break it.
Yeah. So, but this is my one at the base that I use at home. This is the one in one of them in Medina County. They have several that they put up, and they've actually, I'll show you a map in the next screen, that they've covered completely Medina County. How many are you familiar with the V2BE mapping software as far as path and propagation, as far as using VHF, UHF type of, anybody familiar with that?
I'm familiar with it. I don't know how to use it. but I'm
Okay.
familiar with
So basically it's a software program. You can you have to go to the map and drop a pin where your transmitter is located at, and then you put in the parameters of how high above, average terrain it is, your antenna is, the power it's using, and so forth. And it will draw you a theoretical model of how far distance-wise that will be able to go. It's theoretical. In Medina County, I was talking to Patrick today and yesterday, who is one of the key folks in Medina County. He's putting theirs together. He's actually tested their theoretical model, and it's been proven. So it's not just theoretical. By the way, you can do trace routes. Like on computers, you can do a trace route, see where it's connected and how you're getting to another. This, you can do a trace route with this too. So for example, if I'm connected to you, Jacqueline, and I want to see, well, how did I get to her? I can hit trace route, and it went to him, went to her, and then went to you. So I can see how it made it. So you can do trace routes.
Hops.
Yes, you can see the hops that it makes. That's gee-whiz information. So, but anyway, but start. Yes, sir.
Yeah, a little solar. We're coming up on the month of August. It's going to be really hot. What's the temperature limits for a solar tower mounted unit like that?
I'll have to go back and look. It's in the documentation somewhere.
Is that a concern?
I've not seen any concern. I think the biggest concern that I've seen in the research that I've done and looking when I was buying batteries and so forth was the concern with the batteries, because lithium polymer iron. Anyway, lipo batteries. There's a concern there particularly with cold.
Okay.
So there's a different style of battery different type of battery that you can get that works in colder climates.
What about for the whiz block circuit board itself?
I've not seen anything that said that it would be an issue, at least from what my research has shown. There may be something out there. Again, I encourage you to go dig and
We'll
find.
find out next month.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, I've had mine up on the roof of my house, and it's been over 100 degrees I've had any issues with it. So far so good. It's only anecdotal, but
You were talking channels earlier. Let's say a new user walks in the room with his transceiver. What advice do you give him on channel selection? He wants to hook as many nodes as possible.
okay. Well, most of them, when you set them up, you set your channel 0 for long fast. And so that's the open channel for everybody.
Okay, good.
Yep, so it's an open channel, and that's all in the documentation on the Meshtastic.org. If you follow their instructions, you should be able to get it working. Now there's something else I didn't mention, but there's a way you can make a gateway with any one of the radios. You can connect a mesh. For example, if we have a mesh here in San Antonio, I can connect that mesh to one in Houston over the internet using Wi-Fi. So I set up a device and it connects Wi-Fi to my router, and I can set it up to a server online, but I have to specify Houston, and then it will communicate over LoRa, the 915 megahertz, to the mesh. So you can do that. I mean, that's great as long as the internet works.
Yeah.
you know.
It's down in a lot of Houston
Right.
right now.
I mean, it's good for, you know, if you have some special thing that you're wanting to do with a regional something, but that's an option. So,
I will tell you, Meshtastic actually really intrigued me. I didn't know anything about it when he did it. I got slightly introduced by Jack K5AJ, and he's been doing it. He bought some equipment, and so I started looking into it. And during field day a couple weeks ago, I ran into a bunch of guys out in the Casterville area, and they've got a network set up all over the place in an area that you wouldn't think would have it. And so what we ended up with was a lot of interest, gentlemen. And the one guy, I met him for the first time that day, and we talked about it. And I invited him to give a little introductory talk on it. And it's intrigued me enough that I'm playing with the idea now. I don't know if I'll jump on it or not, but I'm playing with the idea. It's intriguing. I just have to figure out what it will do for me, especially since we will be remote, and I guarantee nobody's going to connect on the thing. Miss Andrea?
Yes.
Oh, I was just seeing if you had anything to say about Meshtastic.
No, other than what I said before, it sounds a bit meshy.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it's intriguing, and I do like the way it links up to everything around there automatically and completes a path all the way out. So it's kind of fascinating. But you know, right now my biggest problem is I need another project in my shack like I need a hole in the head. My focus right now is working my way up to the gigahertz bands past 23 centimeters. So I'm trying to go up that way. Speaking of that, have you ever used your new ICOM yet?
The 905?
Yeah.
No.
You know, I think you should store it at my house. I'm just saying.
Oh, it's real bad is I've got it. I do have to rework my equipment in the car, and the car is currently up in NewJersey. And so I expect to operate the September VHF contest up that way. But all the equipment I need for my updates, upgrades are 9700, 905, all seem to be down here in Texas. So not sure how I'm going to pull that off. But I probably won't make any changes for the September contest. And it'll be a different type of contest operating up there for the first time in a while.
Yeah, I would think there'd be a lot more activity up there, just because it's more congested than, say, Texas, where you can drive 14 hours before you see somebody.
Well, so here's a trade-off. One, at least in Texas, everybody goes on the calling frequency. So if you're looking for a contact, an analog contact versus a digital contact, you know where you're going to find people. You just listen there, you call there. The second thing is pretty much wherever you are on the highway, it's elevated a little bit. From a rover, it gives me that over the trees type of condition. And okay, sometimes you're going in between hills. When you go up in the Northeast, what changes is because there's a lot of activity for many years, people would be on different frequencies. So you actually had to hunt frequencies for people. The plus side of that was certain people you knew were on a certain frequency. or they would stake out a frequency, and that would be their frequency for the contest. So as a rover, I'd go over, dial over here, work this person, dial over there, work that person, sometimes even before I get to the best location.
Sort of like 6 meters has been.
Yeah, but they'll still tend to do this. You got big players like W2SZ, and so they have their frequency. So even QSYing, you're not using the calling frequency. And so in Texas, I can easily, oh, let's go up to 220. Somebody says they don't even mention the frequency. I know it's going to be on the calling frequency, so I go look for them there, even though I didn't catch them on, say, 2 meters before they changed.
Yeah.
It's a little easier, whereas you might have dialed in a bit late and say, okay, QSY, and you know what band, but you don't know what frequency. And in the Northeast, a lot of times people are going to different frequencies. They want to get on quieter frequencies.
Yeah.
Now, add in the digital modes. So what happens is, of course, the digital modes are all on one frequency, but people still spread out on frequencies rather than follow a pattern where everybody's on the calling frequency so you can find everybody. People still spread out, and it makes it even rarer and more difficult to make analog contacts. There are a number of stations that are running in the analog only category. The other big fat thing that changes when you're up there is because of the trees, and there's a lot of hills in northern New Jersey, basically up through New England, that there's a lot of places you're just not driving along the road is just not very productive for working distant stations. So you have to concentrate your contacts when you get up to the hilltops. And certain people, big stations, I may work at lower in places where I know I can get them, but when I get up to the hilltop, then I have to work the more distant stations, get everybody I can, and do it in a short period of time and get moving. So it is a very, very different type of operation.
Yeah, well, that sounds, and I hadn't taken that into consideration. I was just thinking with all the population density, you should be able to make quite a few contacts and before you get out of your driveway and stuff.
Well,
and you know,
not my driveway, but
yeah, the digital modes, I wish they would move them off of the main contest, take them away from the June contest, and I wouldn't mind them being, I think they should be on their own contest.
Well, do you have any idea if there's like serious conversation about that?
There's lots of conversation. There's and mentioning the VHF conference before, at prior conferences, at least for 3 years now, this has been a topic of discussion. I did a paper on I'm trying to think what it was, like what we can do with station automation. And one of the things I highlight as why people like the FT modes is because not strictly the performance, because yes, you can get some good performance out of it, but you've also got the downsides when everybody's on the same frequency. But it does simplify operations. And a lot of automation, and it basically automates the contact process. So if you don't have good hearing, it kind of equalizes. You don't need the same skill set. You don't need to, you can work at the same sort of distance somebody that knew CW could do, maybe even further with the JT modes. So there are reasons that make it attractive. It makes it simpler to operate. And one of my contentions in my paper was that the human and the way the rules that the ARRL has set up, some of these rules came out, I want to say, in a little bit of response to my paper to try and head off some of my proposals for some more intelligent automation. What kind of irks me a little bit is, as it's set up right now, it's automated and the human does the dumb part. The human has to click the button to call CQ, or at a slightly more intelligent level, click on a call sign, say, answer that call sign. But if you call CQ, somebody else answers you, the software is configurable and it'll work, everybody. And the ARRL's put a rule that the operator has to initiate, well, not strictly initiate contact, because you can, within the rule, you have to initiate either the CQ or answering somebody. You can't set up a robot. But what I was proposing was some other types of automation. I wanted the human beings to be able to do more intelligent stuff with those digital modes and not just be the dumb element in the loop, which is what it is right now.
Yeah, my personal opinion is it's ruined the contest. It used to be 6 meters. There were, if you looked at the propagation real-time maps, it was contacts being made everywhere. Nobody was on phone. I think I heard 5 stations during the June contest out of this area on 6, and that was it. And
well, 6 conditions on 6 just weren't good for most of the contest.
Possible, but I mean, a bad contest for me used to be 75 to 100 contacts. Now, that whole weekend, I worked 9 contacts.
So I'll add a little bit, and I've kind of said these things at different times. Certainly 6 meters as a search band, unless the band's wide open, but 6 meters and 2 meters used to be the main search bands, meaning you call CQ, people answer you, and then you QSY through the bands. Unless you had a multi-op station, you generally did not go call CQ on 70 centimeters. Some people did, but mostly 6 meters and 2. Well, with the FT modes on 6 meters, it's not an effective search band anymore, leaving just 2 meters. And as the FT modes are used there, again, that's more challenging analog.
Yeah.
But there's another.
I just would wish that they would get rid of FT8 during the June and the September contest. Now, I don't care if they meant to create a FT8 contest or something, but I just, my personal opinion is I wish they would get rid of it. I think it's ruined the contest. But there's 2 other things that are at play, and I speak to these in the paper that I did, and I want to say that was 2019. It was at the VHF Super Conference, and I actually had Joe Taylor in the audience kind of eyeing me as I laid out my arguments. But okay, the other 2 things that play are 2 major role changes that occurred by the ARRL, or rule changes, not role changes. One was the assistance rules, that you could now arrange skeds in real time with people. That started to change the behavior from calling CQ to, getting people on the phone, text messaging, or whatever to get them to you. And that started the trend of dropping the number of CQ, people calling CQ. And because I'm getting older here, I forgot what the other one was, but there was something, there were basically 2 factors at play before the JT modes came around, or the FT8, let's call it, because that's really one. The MSK 441 or MSK
144, the meteor scatter modes.
Yeah.
Those kind of added and gave more options for people to work, typically at nighttime, certain key times of the day. But FT8 specifically displaced things. And so anyway, I wish I could remember that other one
Yeah,
at the moment.
At
I
the
can't.
6 meter
remember.
barbecue last year, Joe wasn't real happy with some of my viewpoints. He made the mistake of asking me what I thought, and well, I think I kind of upset him a little bit. But what was funny is in his speech, he actually agreed with what I said, that it was ruining the phone portion of the contest and stuff. Well, ladies, we have got to get out of here. Number one, we've gone over our time slot. I would love to have a segment where we do the whole show on FT8, pros and cons and contesting sometime in the future. So when we wind up ourselves sometime, let's do that. And then don't forget, for those in the San Antonio area, every Monday at 7 p.m. is CQ52. So join us on there. And of course, on Sunday at 7 p.m. on 144.180 of the sideband net, which Andrea has managed to check in a couple times. But
A couple times. Not now. Not from.
no,
with
you kind of left her over in the wrong parking lot. All right. 73, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye-bye, 7-3.